Bonjour tout le monde, j'espère que vous allez bien. De mon côté, ça va super bien. Bienvenue sur Ancien M-Éducation. Aujourd'hui, j'ai une vidéo très importante à vous partager. C'est une vidéo pleine d'enseignements, ok? Tellement remplie de connaissances, d'empathie, de partage. Je ne saurais même pas en fait comment décrire cette vidéo. J'ai eu le privilège de la regarder sur YouTube et je me suis dit en fait, étant donné que cette vidéo est remplie de tellement d'enseignements, pourquoi la garder pour moi-même et ne pas plutôt la partager avec vous qui me regardez sur cette chaîne? La vidéo pourra vous sembler un peu longue, mais elle vaut vraiment la peine d'être regardée et le message qui est véhiculé dans cette vidéo vaut vraiment la peine d'être entendu. Je vous laisse la regarder et ensuite de ça, partagez-moi ce que vous aurez ressenti ou ce que la vidéo... En fait, partagez-moi votre ressenti dans les commentaires tout simplement. Voilà.
If I could go back in time and teach my 20-something self one very valuable lesson that could have transformed the last 4 decades of my life, it would be this one simple thing. Live below your means. Now, I know that sounds really simple and contrite and whatever, and, financial gurus tell us to do this all the time, and certainly my parents lived this way. They modeled this for me throughout my life. But I was young, and I was newly married, and I had a couple of kids, and I was stupid. I was just stupid. And we lived way beyond our means for the longest time. And when I think about what it cost me, not money, money's never been important, very important. But when I think about the heartbreak and the stress and the anxiety and the lost opportunities and the dreams that never happened because I had strapped us to a debt wheel so massive, there were times we couldn't breathe. That's what I want to talk about today. Now, at its core, living below your means applies to anyone. Whether you are making $30,000 a year or you're making $300,000 a year, we all need to live within our means. I was making really good money when I was in my 20s. For the time, we're talking about the late 70s, early 80s, I was making a really good living. But I always wanted the next thing. And I don't really know why. I don't know. I think there were times when I was trying to create some kind of happiness in the home that maybe wasn't there. Or maybe I was trying to impress people that I graduated high school with because I didn't think I was very well liked when I was in high school. I don't know the reasons. I know that, most of my money, big money, went to cars. And I've talked about this in previous videos, but if you're new to this channel, you probably have not heard these stories before. And at one time, we had 3 cars and a bass boat. There were only two of us that could drive. And, you know, one of those cars was sort of an old beat up Jeep, and we'd paid most of it. We had a little bit of money still owed on it. But then the other two cars were what we drove to work every day, and we were paying payments on those cars. They weren't paid for. The payments, the insurance, the gas. And then I would trade cars. We would get tired of that one and buy another one. And sometimes I would trade cars. We're talking new cars, brand new cars. I would trade the car in like 8 months. Lose a lot of money on the trade-in. But I felt good because I had another new car. We went out to eat all the time. I mean, all the time. And it wasn't just my wife and I going out for dinner, or maybe trying to have some time alone away from the kids. It wasn't just that. It was the family of four. We ate out all the time. I would buy my wife new clothes. Maybe something new every week. Just trying to look as if we had it all together. And I'm not going to lie, that there were times when the power got shut off. There were times when the phone got shut off because we didn't have enough money to pay the bill. It was embarrassing. It was heart-wrenching. It was horrific. And I would wind up begging my parents for help. It became very quickly begging my mom for help because my dad was gone. And there have been more than a handful of times that my mom has bailed us out of my stupidity. Now, it's easy to understand in today's age why enough never really feels like it's enough. Social media impacts us. It's never been easier to get credit, or at least it wasn't. Maybe it's harder now. But you could go take out a loan for almost anything. And then there is this whole thing about lifestyle creep. You get a little raise, and instead of socking that money away, you start to buy another dinner out, or you take a better vacation, or you think about being able to afford a little more mortgage for a little more house. And all of these things just continue to add and add and add. And it was probably the single most detrimental decision of my life to live beyond my means. And I think I lived with this lie that I was just one purchase away from happiness. It's like the gambling addict. He's just one throw of the dice away from hitting it big. You're just one lottery ticket away from winning the jackpot. And you're just one gadget, one car, one suit, one new picture in the living room away from finally feeling peace. And that peace never, ever, ever comes. And it brings with it this huge weight that strips away so much potential in life. Your freedom is gone. Your freedom to leave a job and take a month off before you find another job, not going to happen. The freedom to to breathe easier when you get the electric bill in the mail never happens. because you've already spent that money on something else last week that you needed to put aside for this week, and now you're worried about stealing from next week to cover this week, and the battle just rages on and on and on. So if I were to tell my 20-something-year-old self about living beneath your means, it would entail these kinds of things to help me understand. And one is, get a budget. I mean, come on, let's get real. How hard is it to write down what you got going out the door and what you got coming in the door every month? I do that now. I know exactly where I'm at every day of the week. And why I couldn't do that in my 20s or my 30s or my 40s and on into my 50s, I have no idea. Living below your means also means figuring out the difference between what you want and what you really, really need. And for me, as I've grown older and begun to realize that I needed to pay off my credit card debt and I needed to live debt free, and I need to be able to pay off my credit cards, the only debt I have, pay off my credit cards every month, never carry a balance. As I began to realize that, that's sort of when this idea of minimalism kicked in. And minimalism is really about making the decision between what you want and what you need. And if you've got money to get what you want, get it. No problem. But if you're getting what you want at the expense of what you need, you have really screwed up, Mr. Childers. And I screwed up a lot. Living below your means would have meant building a cushion, having 3 or 4 months of living expenses in the savings account, just in case the car broke down, and it did, or just in case you lose your job, and I did, to be prepared. My mom and dad, number one, I never thought of ourselves as poor growing up, but I guess, and from what, compared to what they did growing up, they probably didn't consider themselves to be poor either. But, they lived within their means for years. And so when I was a sophomore going into my junior year in high school, my parents made the decision to move. My dad left his job in Bennettsville, South Carolina, and moved back to Wynne, Arkansas, which is where they were originally from, that area. And my family lived there. My mom's family still lived there. A lot of my dad's family lived there. And they went back with the intention to start their own business. And they took the money that they had saved to live for a year and build a house. Could I have done that? I couldn't have lived for a week. They had meticulously designed their lives, provided for us everything we needed. I mean, Christmas was always great. Birthdays were fun. We took vacations from time to time. It wasn't a big thing. It wasn't Disney World every year. It was going to my grandparents' house or going to the lake to go fishing. But they had it together. And I didn't. I wasn't even close. I wasn't even sure what I had to put it together. The other thing about living below your means is to accumulate as little debt as possible. I mean, as little as possible. Now, there's this whole deal about, do you buy a new car? Do you buy a used car? If you buy a used car, are you going to pay a lot of repair costs? If you buy a house as opposed to renting, then you've got repair costs on the house, and then renting, somebody else is handling all that. I get that. This is not about that. This is about being able to pay the electric bill no matter where you live. That's what this is about. And I think one of the things that is a huge part of living below your means is being happy with enough. When you have enough space in your house, why do you need more? When you have enough cars to drive, why do you need another one? If you have enough clothes to wear to work, why are you constantly going out to buy more? If you have enough food in your house to eat dinner, why are you going out to eat and letting that food go in the trash can because it's spoiled before you could cook it? But this was the life I lived in my 20s. Not proud of it. I'm ashamed to put it in this video. But somebody out there may need to hear my story. I think maybe the most important lesson I would have taught myself is that living below your means is not necessarily about the big things. It's about the constant little choices we make. The little choices like going out to eat too much. The little choices like spending $5 or $6 on a cup of coffee every morning at Starbucks when you can make coffee at home and be just as content. And I did that. I did morning runs to Starbucks every day for years. Did I need that? No. I had coffee at home. I don't know. I look back at the decisions that I've made, and I am angry at myself. I'm embarrassed for myself. And I just shake my head a whole lot of why I'm not a stupid individual, but I made so many stupid decisions for years. So when I look back, I see all these forks in the road. And I almost always took the wrong one. I took the one to more debt rather than taking one to life, to freedom. And I don't know why. At 67 years old, I am now too old to go back and try to figure it out. It happened. I hate that it happened. It caused my family a lot of hardships. Probably kept my mom up at night for years, worrying about whether we were ever going to get our act together or not. So there it is. That's it in a nutshell. If I were to go back to my 20-something, and I'm not guaranteeing that I would have listened, but if I could go back and share with my 20-something self, look, the road you're on, this is what's going to happen. You know, kind of the whole story of It's a Wonderful Life. If I'd had an angel come down and say, if you continue down this road, look at all these lives that are going to be hurting because of the decisions you're making. Maybe I would have woken up and realized it. Maybe I wouldn't have. I don't know. I know that eventually I came to my senses, and eventually I learned to live within my means, and eventually I decided that minimalism was the way to go, essentialism, whatever you want to call it, was the way to go to keep me there. And I am now extremely happy with my life. So, after all of that depressing talk, and I apologize, this video has probably come across as being very depressing. Here are my challenges to you, whether you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, or just turned 67 like I did. Today, if you don't have a budget, get one. Stop what you're doing, sit down, figure it out. It'll take you about an hour. Now, you may have to come back to it a time or two as you realize there are things you left off. How many of us thinking about the dry cleaning bill Or, how many of us think about this subscription we bought to something that we forgot until it gets charged to our charge card again? Still happens to me sometimes. But get the bulk of the budget down today. And this month, pay down a debt. Do everything in your power this month to put aside all of the excess stuff that you thought you wanted and pay down one debt. Charge card. I'm not saying pay it off. Pay it down. Your car payment, extra stuff on the mortgage, whatever's going to give you the biggest bang for your buck, add more money to it this month. And then this year, figure out a plan to get past the hump of spending more than you make, and figure out a plan to get to a place where you are making more than you spend, and get your savings in order, get your debt under control, figure out the difference between what you want and what you need. That's what I would tell my 20-something self. I'm not going to ask you to share your financial history in the comments. That's probably too personal. This entire video is probably way too personal. But if you have something that you would tell your 20-something self that could have transformed your life if you just knew it or paid attention to it or did it, believed it, I would be interested in seeing those in the comments. Don't feel sorry for me. I've got my act together. It took me a long time, but I have my act together. That's the only way I can still travel. That's the only way that I can still buy the camera equipment that I need to do this channel or whatever else I'm getting. It's all within my budget, and I am so happy that it is. So, thank you for listening to my war-weary story.